ROM hacking is the process of taking an already completed video game and altering the graphics, level design, music, and sometimes even the game code to create a new experience based on an old game. The practice dates back to the days of the earliest emulators. Many of the oldest ROM hacks altered the graphics and text to be significantly more shocking and offensive, until research went into changing the layout of the levels. One of the most popular targets for ROM hacks to this day is Super Mario World, and one hack in particular stood out among the crowd for many years. That hack was known as Kaizo Mario World, created by a Japanese hacker. This hack became infamous for being extremely difficult to its sadistic degree, and the term Kaizo became a term used to refer to similar hacks of similar difficulty. Over the years, many other games have been hacked to create amusingly sadistic levels in other engines. Even independent developers got in on the action, with titles such as I Wanna Be the Guy delivering amusing traps and hilarious game overs. Enter the Fire Emblem hacking scene. In 2010, Fire Emblem hacking was developing such that many users were modifying maps and enemy placement in this series of strategy games, and the ease of which they did so was steadily increasing. It was then that a user by the name of Marky Joe 1990 decided to create the Ragefest contest. It was a contest in which users would attempt to create humorous and highly difficult chapters with sadistic design akin to Kaizo Mario World, and then vote on which was the most amusing and fun to watch or play. Hello YouTube, I'm Efring225, and I welcome you to my Ragefest contest retrospective. To start, before Ragefest, what were you kind of known for on the internet, or what were you doing on YouTube?
Well, before Ragefest, right before Ragefest, I was doing Fire Emblem hack reviews, and I was posting those on Fire Emblem forums such as Fire Emblem Universe before it became the new Fire Emblem Universe. We're talking fucking original gangster Fire Emblem Universe, the one that had the shitty MyBB layout and all that good shit.
No, the glory days of MyBB.
Yep. Yeah. What motivated me to get into Mugen, though, was basically people were having trouble with these Mugen characters, and I was like, oh yeah, that guy's totally beatable. I'm going to show a video to impress everybody. And then, I got into a beef with this other YouTuber named Garion Feld, because he was criticizing Melty Blood characters, and at the time, my waifu was Akiha Tono. And I was like, oh, what an asshole. He doesn't like the same things I do? I'm going to make a video where I beat the crap out of his characters, which are basically just edits of other characters. But I digress. Anyway, that was a highly unstructured answer to your question, but...
well, there you go. There you have it. Before Fire Emblem hack reviews, it was Mugen.
It really just goes to show you that even back then, rage was a huge motivation for me.
Right, so, what gave you the idea to start this whole Ragefest contest thing?
I'm glad you asked, because this is a question that I feel very equipped to answer. So, back in ye olden days of YouTube, there was this YouTuber named Draketh, and he had this series called Crappy Game Reviews. And basically the idea is he would go on this forum, I don't remember what it was called, but it was some RPG Maker forum, and he would tell people to submit shitty RPG Maker games for him to play on his channel. I found his videos highly entertaining, and my favorite playthroughs tended to be the ones where he was playing a RPG Maker game that was extremely frustrating, because his reactions were pretty funny. Unfortunately, his account got hacked, and most of those videos are gone, but if you want a glimpse of those RPG Maker games were like, look up Gulpy Gulpy.
Yeah, that's a classic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's still stuck in my head after all these years. I just want to say, Aruga!
Aruga.
Oh God, stop! Bitch, Bible the noise?
That's the inspiration for Ragefest. Basically, it's that series, but with Fire Emblem hacks, and with a focus on difficulty rather than on shittiness.
The original Ragefest contest opened on the old Fire Emblem Universe forums in 2010. The rules were simple. Create a chapter in any GBA Fire Emblem engine with humor, difficulty, and devious traps. There were in total 7 entrants. Only one of these was disqualified. Hi There One's Le chien est adorable, French for the dog is adorable, and I probably butchered the shit out of that, but there's no dog, so we have no idea what's up with the title. One could say, in fact, that Ragefest struggled to discover its own identity, as many submissions had trouble creating the difficulty and humor Marky Joe expected. FE Lover 3 submission, simply titled Untitled, was more tedious and unfunny than anything else. Same goes for 24 Fitz's Morph/Stand, which did little besides place a number of tedious-to-kill bosses on a boring map. Even my own submission, Boss Rush Mode, was really just a plain map with 50 player units going against 50 enemy units in one big battle royale in a similar vein as a lesser-known hack, Sacred Contention, which pitted the cast of FE7 against that of FE8. Boss Rush at least had lots of siege weapons and a magic seal to fool around with, and the fire dragon on the throne at the end was seriously annoying to kill, given that it could only die for good during an enemy phase. This was also technically the first ROM hack I'd ever completed, so special thanks to Marky Joe for kickstarting my hacking and game development careers. You started the first contest. How did you kind of expect the contest to turn out, or how did it end up going, in your opinion?
Well, okay, so when I first submitted it, I kind of had this, feeling, this gut instinct telling me that this was a good idea, and that people would actually do this, they would actually enter the contest. And after I announced the contest and stuff, there were actually quite a few people who posted on FE Universe in the original Ragefest 1 thread saying, oh, this is a great idea, I want to submit to this. And that's when I knew that this was a good idea. And then the submissions actually came, and, I really don't know what I was expecting. I honestly was not expecting anything of the quality of Matthew's Nightmare. I was expecting basically something akin to crappy game reviews by Draketh. Of similar quality, I'd say. Because the original idea of the contest was not actually difficulty, now that I think about it. I think I specifically said that the goal of the contest is to troll me. And later on it changed to a focus on difficulty. But,
right.
Yeah, I played all the submissions, and some of them were some of them were also and then Matthew's Nightmare came around, and I'm like, okay, this is the new standard. If I were to make another contest, this is going to be what I use as an example for other people if they want to aspire to win the contest. Yeah, I mean, I had no expectations until Ragefest 2, I'd say.
One submission that was surprisingly noteworthy was Subieko's Desperate Struggle. This hack had an actual plot, incomprehensible as it was, and to the shock of many when I discovered it several years later by data mining it, this hack has an alternate ending. The most annoying aspect of this hack is the amount of grinding you have to do at the arena long after an already boring map in order to kill the final boss. But it turned out that talking to him and seizing the throne ends the map with an imperfect ending, which makes it somewhat ironic that this submission was the one most responsible for Marky Joe implementing a rule in future contests that you could not feature arenas in your map whatsoever. It's also one of the earliest examples of what happens when none of the enemies move unless they can attack something. Taking it slow ends up being the best option, if the most boring. In Ragefest 1, were any of the other submissions other than Matthew's Nightmare memorable for whatever reason.
Maze of the Troll King, obviously, because of the bit near the end where I'm like, Archibald! Oh! What? Archibald! It was also the only other submission for Ragefest 1 that I would say is of considerable quality. Because all the other submissions are rather basic. And I love you, Ephraim, but your first submission was your first submission.
Yeah, I pretty much accepted that. That's why I updated it.
Yeah, so, like... Yeah, the other submissions were not very noteworthy at all, which is why I wonder why people think Ragefest 1 was such a great contest, because, yeah, it was at the time, but standards have gotten way higher, and there are much better submissions on average.
The two remaining submissions are easily the most noteworthy of Ragefest 1. Camtech 075's Maze of the Troll King easily proved the most sadistic and obtuse, as it gave the player only one unit and tasked the player with navigating a maze in Thracia fog. What this means is that spaces outside vision range appear completely black, so the player can't see where they are going. Navigating a maze while trying to find a chest containing a door key and then trying to find the correct door, which by the way doesn't look like an actual door, proved very frustrating. Doubly so when one considers that every so often the maze walls would shift, even resulting in the chests vanishing and reappearing. Suffice to say, as crazy as it is to see this completed, this submission led Marky Joe to tighten restrictions on obtuse puzzles and especially on Fog of War itself. However, one submission in Ragefest 1 stood out among all the others. Matthew's Nightmare by Cedar Nix is practically unanimously considered the best submission in the contest because it's precisely what the contest was made for. This submission has an actually comprehensible plotline, involving Sarah inventing a sleep staff that can control dreams. Naturally, she uses it to put Matthews through pure torture until he agrees to be her vassal. With its clever use of the most memorable characters from FE7, funny jokes and silly game overs, and some especially clever traps, this submission won the entire contest hands down. Though some would say it hasn't aged well, this submission has 3 maps in total. The first is basically a Fog of War maze, the second reduces the player's movement but not the enemies, while the player has to dart around game over tiles, and the third map ends with a highly obtuse puzzle involving figuring out the one tile that hasn't changed in the entire trek. But this submission set the standard and is remembered fondly for it.
I used to think it was an amazing submission, and to its credit, it's, it is certainly better than a lot of the submissions that were made at the time. But ever since Ragefest 4, I looked back at Matthew's Nightmare and I'm like, you know what? I'm glad what this submission did for the contest, but it has not aged well at all. There are better submissions, such as Ragefest Revengeance, that are just significantly better, much better designed, have better writing, etc., etc. So, it has its place in history, but I also don't think it has aged very well.